Evening. Tonight is Monday, August 10th, and we do have a quorum, so I will call this meeting to order. Due to the current federal and state emergency declarations, the Minnesota directive to residents to stay at home and guideline about limiting person-to-person contact due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this regular meeting of the Edina Public School District is being conducted online in accordance with Minnesota Statutes 13D-021. In accordance with this, all votes tonight will be done by roll call. People may monitor this meeting from a remote location using the district's YouTube channel. And school board members and other meeting attendees are reminded to mute their microphone or phone when they are not speaking. School board members wishing to speak should unmute their microphone so I can see who is waiting to speak, and then I will determine the order in which people will be recognized tonight. John, would you like to review our agenda for this evening?
Thank you. Yes. So tonight we will hear from members of the public. John will be reading a couple of statements that were sent in to us the last couple of days. The Community Education Summer Program Report will be provided at the beginning of the meeting. Consent agenda. We have, of course, minutes, as well as some revised school board meeting updates, and also amended the 2021-2022 academic calendar that's noted in consent agendas. For discussion. Talk about the strategic priorities. We had a work session prior to this meeting to identify where those priorities will land. Then we have policy discussion. And for action, we have some general obligation school building bonds and school building refunding bonds. We're also going to ask the board to take action on a proposed calendar revision due to the COVID-19 for the 2021 school year. Board will discuss board norms they've been working on the last few months, committee name change, approval of policies, and then leadership updates.
Great. Thank you, John. The first thing on our agenda tonight is approval of tonight's agenda. And I wanted to let the board know that there was a request to remove policy 601 from the agenda tonight. And so how this is going to work is I'm going to have a motion to approve our meeting agenda with policy 601 in it. If you want to keep the agenda as is, then you would vote yes. If you want to remove policy 601, you would vote no. And then I will have a follow-up motion from that. So I just wanted to let people know how the mechanics around that.
And Chair Allen, we would be having an update on the planning for 2021 before the discussion.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And Erica, if I could jump in, is 601 going to be the idea there to be pushed back to September?
I actually don't know. So if I can make the motion, then we could hear the concerns about it. And then you guys can decide if you want to vote to keep it on the agenda or remove.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll move to approve the agenda as published so far.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay. So then,
Do we need to do roll call vote for that, Erica?
we haven't voted yet, but yes, when we do, we will.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed who seconded. I could not see.
It's me, Julie.
Thank you, Julie.
So Ellen, did you want to address why you wanted to remove it from the agenda?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. The reason I asked to take that off is because the district is involved in dealing with a pandemic. That our last school board meeting was 5 hours, and there's a lot on our plate to discuss. That it's very important, and I want the focus to be on how the district is going to start the new school year. And my concern is that we really don't have time to go into some of these other areas, especially because the District Advisory Council for Gifted and Talented was not part of this discussion. I'd prefer to wait until after this has been presented to them and the board has some feedback before the board is going to start discussion on this. So my request for just taking it off is in the interest of time, in the essence of making sure that our priorities are focused on the areas where they need to be focused on, and in order to give the voices of the people that are most impacted by this a chance to give the district feedback, I would like to wait until after the District Advisory Council has been presented the K-12 talent development framework for feedback.
Are there any other comments before we vote to approve the agenda as is or not? No, Lenny? Yeah.
So, my recollection, and Randy, I think you're on this call, was that Randy had initially requested that this policy get approved at an earlier meeting so that, as we rolled things out during the year, there was guidance from the board in terms of what the approach was. So, Randy, are you on this call?
I am.
So am I correct that you had initially asked that we try to resolve the wording of 601, and perhaps your concern was if there was going to be a major change to the focus of 601 that teaching and learning would need to focus on, that was your concern for an early resolution. If there isn't going to be a major change, perhaps it's not as time sensitive.
So our concern was with curriculum revision processes, that we have that framework in place at the front of those processes, so that as teachers are redesigning courses or grade level content in a curricular area, that framework can be applied, and that work can be done prior to when courses need to be submitted to the board for approval, which is November for the first discussion, and then December for action, so that they can hit into the registration guide by January. So ours is one of our concern is one of timeline to give teachers enough advance notification to be able to implement the K-12 framework into the curricular review process. And I would like to say that we did present the K-12 talent development framework to the Gifted and Talented Advisory Committee last year, and that was done by Deb Richards. And we did have really positive feedback from that committee when we presented it to them. So they have seen it, and they have provided feedback on it.
Matt, did you have something to add?
No, I took you off mute to be able to vote.
Julie, did you have anything to add?
I just wanted to add that the process of how we got to where we are today with policy 601 was very representative of what happened in January with the forming of a subcommittee to take a look at that. And that included feedback that had been gathered from the community and our administrators, teachers, and some board members who have been working on this and taking another look at it and incorporating, as Randy said, the talent development framework to give more clarity to policy 601. It also was done in conjunction with language from MCGT, the Minnesota Council of Gifted and Talented, and also the National Council of Gifted and Talented, and also a partnership that our district has worked with NewMats, which is the Northwestern University group that are really the gold standard for gifted and talented and acceleration for all students, and making sure that we are really meeting the needs and challenging students in all ways. And so I just wanted to put that out there in terms of perspective as we move forward. So I feel it's ready for discussion.
So we've heard Ellen's concerns and some other people. So I think we are ready to vote on. So this would be approving the meeting as is with policy 601, like I stated earlier. And then if that doesn't pass, then I will make a revised motion. Does that make sense? So I think we're ready to vote now.
Okay, Allenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Nay.
Michelson,
Nay.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen-Friedman.
Aye.
Okay, so the board agenda passed as is with policy 601 in it. And the agenda is approved for tonight. Now we're going to move on to our excellence in action portion. And in tonight's excellence in action, we're going to hear from the coordinators of some of the district summer programs, and they're going to introduce us to their program and talk about how they were able to adapt to the current challenges of the summer in order to continue serving Edina students and families. So presenting tonight, we have Cheryl Guinness, Mark DeYoung, and Rachel Hicks. So welcome, and thank you for coming tonight.
And Val Burke is here too, somewhere. There she is, Val. Okay.
Thank you, Erica and John. My name is Rachel Hicks, and I'm the Youth Programs Coordinator for Edina Community Education. The past 6 months, my priority has been supporting our Kids Club Wise Guys School Age Care programming for all 6 elementary schools. After the uncertainty of whether we would be able to offer programming at all, we are delighted to report that over 200 students participated in full-day summer programming. My team of amazing staff, Jane Tierney, Serenity Sebesta, Tim Facklis, Tash Deanna Bell, Trent Osman, Paul Miller, Jared Little, and Kimberly Nolene, worked tirelessly to create a safe, fun, and engaging environment for all students that participated. From creating new cleaning and safety protocols that will now guide the district as we return to school, to practicing a COVID-19 simulation to reduce and mitigate risk for all staff and students on site. This team has done remarkable things in a short period of time. I am proud to work alongside these amazing staff as well as our hardworking recreation leaders that supported students on a daily basis. Their creativity, diligence, and dedication to the district's students and families is evident and should be applauded. I'm looking forward to what we can provide for families as we enter an unpredictable school year. Next is Mark DeYoung.
You're on mute, Mark.
You're muted, Mark.
There we go.
Not anymore. Good evening. Thank you, Rachel. Good evening, board members and community. My name is Mark DeYoung, and I am the assistant principal over at Concord Elementary School and the Targeted Services Coordinator. Targeted Services in Edina is essentially called Summer Success Centers, and it's a program designed to support the academic needs of scholars who qualify for the program. I'd also like to start off by acknowledging my deep level of gratitude to so many people who helped support this program. The Nathan Munseth and Molly O'Keefe were wonderful supporters of the program and helped me through so many programs. I feel like we were able to touch just about every person in the district, whether it was special ed, transportation, food service, DMTS, teaching and learning, CRP, high school volunteers, community ed, health services, multilingual learners, buildings and grounds. It was a big task. Also a big shout out to Rachel and community ed. A lot of what we did in terms of on-site summer success, we modeled after what Rachel and her team did, both at Highlands and at Concord. Just so you know, typically we offer summer success at the end of summer, and it's an in-person program. However, when the time came when the Governor Walz had pivoted to distance learning, we had to make a decision what we were going to do for the summer. And we had a few choices. And one was to not offer it at all, summer success. Another one was to wait and kind of hope that we could meet in person. Or another one was that we could do a hybrid version. And some school districts chose to wait and not do it at all. But we decided that we were going to start in distance learning. And we served 400 students through a distance learning model to begin with. And then recently we pivoted to an on-site program that started July 27th and just finished last week. And so we had about 100 kids come to Countryside and we served them. And many of the things that Rachel and her team did, we also did as well too. Anything from strict, tight pods to keeping the kids segregated in terms of who they were playing with outside, entry and exit protocols, cleaning protocols, using visuals to sort of help the kids with social distancing, videos out ahead of time to parents as they were coming to school to talk to them about, the cleaning protocols and face masks and things along those lines. So I would just like to say that it was just a huge effort on a lot of people to make it come together. And we were just a small segment of what took place this summer. But I'm really proud of the kids and of the teachers that worked very hard to make it happen. So I think it was very successful. And it was great seeing kids and their smiling faces. And some of the kids were just happy to ride a bus to school because they hadn't done that in a really long time. So there we are. And with that, I will pass it to Cheryl.
Thank you. My name is Cheryl Gunnis, and I'm the Community Involvement Coordinator for Edina Community Ed. And I'm going to take my 2 minutes to commend my colleagues Kayla Mehring and Annie Schilling for their leadership in planning and delivering summer youth enrichment programs for our community. Annie and Kayla were new to their positions as our youth enrichment specialists in November. And in their first 6 months, they had the pleasure of planning summer programming not once, but twice. First, in a pre-COVID world when their efforts had us on track for the most successful summer program we've had on record. And then again, in a new reality. So amidst the challenging and continually evolving circumstances, Annie and Kayla created a summer 2020 program that really brought our vision and mission and values to life. They created a program that fully acknowledged the serious risks of the COVID-19 pandemic and that also created conditions to promote health and safety as part of our shared community responsibility to mitigate those risks. They created a program that exceeded our revised goals for participation numbers and the breadth of the offerings, and they gave families who were ready and able and comfortable the opportunity to learn, grow, and connect, and begin to return to civic life in a thoughtful and structured way. In total, our programs logged over 3,200 registrations and 286 courses offered over 11 weeks of summer. And because many of these are multi-week camps, on average, we had about 500 students participating in enrichment camps each week with a high of 750 students in 1 week. We're going to share a little more about the success of this program in the report later in this meeting, but for now, I want to assure you that this program didn't happen without really long hours, dedication, complex logistical planning, professionalism, and especially poise and compassion under pressure. Annie and Kayla had support from our entire community involvement team, including Karen Rarick, Krista Phillips, Josh Fremder, our community ed administrative staff. I just have to say that this entire team has really shown that they are true community educators. They cared a lot all day, all summer long. They worked really hard. They went well beyond their job descriptions because I think they understand that at the heart of a thriving community like ours is a commitment to lifelong learning and our collective physical and mental health. And I would just share that I think the payoff for all this hard work is maybe best encapsulated by an interaction we had with one of our young participants, no more than 6, who popped out of her minivan on the 3rd day of soccer camp. And she stopped and looked us in the eye and she said, "I am in a very happy mood to be here." Mission accomplished. So I just really want to thank you, this team and all of our partners who helped us deliver some very happy moods this summer.
Nice. Thank you, Cheryl. Val, were you going to add on to it or?
No, I'm just really proud to be a part of all of this group. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheryl, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Mark, can you share a little bit how Success Center is used by elementary as an intervention for the students that attend that?
Yeah, so we have criteria where students can enter and be eligible to be a part of our program. And they're essentially academic benchmarks that students meet. And then they are invited to participate in the program, and parents can choose if they wish to partake or not. And then as we go through that, we monitor, their progress. I would say a big piece of this, Dr. Schultz, this summer was SEL. I think knowing the experience that the kids had the last couple of months of school, it was a really big effort on our part to make sure that the kids stayed connected and had a positive, good experience with school and school staff members. And so we worked really, really hard, more so than any other year, to sort of support the SEL needs of kids, of our learners. And I think that we were able to do that. It wasn't without challenges and it wasn't without problems, but I think it was great to see the kids. And definitely there's a good portion of kids that I think feel comfortable about coming back to the school, as well as their parents feel comfortable about that experience. So I don't know if that answers your question, John.
It does. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, thank you to the entire team. It's great not only what you did for the students so they could have programming in the summer, but also what we've been able to learn and glean from the protocols you put in place to help us as we implement our programming in the fall. So thank you. You guys have done outstanding work and I really appreciate it. So we're going to move on to our hearings from members of the public. So we do have, I believe it's 1 or 2 requests for a community email to be read. And so John Tope is here right now to read the community feedback for us.
You're muted, John.
There we go. The first letter is from Kelly Lang, and she writes, "Dear Superintendent Schultz, first and foremost, thank you for taking the time to hear my concerns and for tirelessly working on our children's behalf during these extremely tenuous times. I'm leaning toward opting for Edina Virtual Academy due to the reality of the pandemic and what I feel will keep our children, teachers, school staff, our own families, and community at large the safest until we see this virus declining. However, I have many concerns about this choice, mostly due to a lack of information. I'm also disappointed that to do EVA, you have to opt out. I was hoping in the best interest of all, EVA would be the default and hybrid would be opting out. I think many parents I speak with want to take the path of least resistance and also say they don't plan to stay in hybrid or think it won't last long, but are willing to try it out. With this general consensus, I'm looking for reassurance that EVA has been prioritized equally with the hybrid plan. I think under these circumstances, EVA needs to offer all the same classes as hybrid. I feel EVA needs to have the same amount of live, synchronous, on-screen teaching as the hybrid model. I also feel it's very important to group EVA students with their neighborhood school and teachers to keep up relationships and bolster community. And if EPS has to go all virtual, that their friends from their school will be added into the EVA classes, not kept separate from EVA students, so they are not further isolated. I'm also interested in knowing if Edina had chosen to not offer an in-person model, if the district would have lost out on some federal funding. If this is the case, I'd like to see transparency from the district and have them relay this fact to parents. Most importantly, I'm hoping at tonight's school board meeting, EVA is presented as a very thorough, engaging, rigorous, well thought out, and exciting option for Edina students. Thank you for your time, Kelly Lang. The next letter is from Megan Feeney. She writes, "Dear school board members, Superintendent Schultz, and EPS administrators, thank you all for your leadership through this difficult time. I know this is incredibly challenging and I sincerely appreciate your hard work. In my family, we have been leaning towards Edina Virtual Academy for my rising 7th grader and 4th grader. However, the school board work session on Thursday, August 6th left me concerned that EVA is being treated like an afterthought. Even describing the two different models as one being the default that parents must opt out makes me uneasy. Overall, it feels like all of EPS's energy is going into figuring out how to get kids face-to-face in the hybrid model, and that EVA has been deprioritized. I hope this is only temporary, the result of the all-consuming complexity of launching the hybrid model. I hope you can assure me this won't be the case moving forward. I know I am not alone. I understand that EPS is waiting to get parent choice numbers to better design EVA. At the same time, it is hard to choose EVA without a little more information. Moreover, I imagine that EPS needs a certain number of students to enroll in EVA to make the hybrid model even possible due to space constraints and teacher preferences. From talking to other parents, I believe more of us would choose EVA if we were assured of the district's commitment to its high quality. In other words, I imagine it is in the district's interest to do that, assuring, and I think it is possible to make certain commitments even as choice numbers are pending. To that end, here's what I'll be listening for tonight. 1, a commitment that EVA students will get roughly the same amount of live, synchronous, albeit online, instruction as the hybrid students get. A goal of 30 to 40% synchronous teaching was floated at the school board work session. I would like the district to commit to this or something close to it as a goal. 2, a commitment to grouping students together in accordance with their neighborhood schools, i.e. those school students and teachers, to the extent that parent choice numbers and teacher preferences allow. It's hard to feel like you're opting out of a neighborhood school you love. And EVA students still need that social, emotional connectedness, including familiar faces for their mental health, even if they choose or need online learning. I think grouping students according to their neighborhood schools is a relatively easy way to achieve that stated goal of the districts. 3, clarification about the fluidity of students between the two models, hybrid and EVA. Will students in the hybrid model be able to switch to EVA at any time for whatever reason? I hear a lot of parents planning to just go with the flow to start and to pull out their kids, move to EVA if they're not satisfied with safety protocols or if community COVID numbers go up. If so, I hope the district will balance the desire for hybrid students to switch with the potential disruption to EVA students when new students arrive continually. I'm all for fluidity and flexibility, just want assurance of equal consideration. Relatedly, if COVID numbers go up in Hennepin County and thus force a switch from the hybrid model to remote learning, will EVA students be folded back into their neighborhood schools? This would be less of a concern for me if the district commits to number 2 above. 4, a sense that EVA's seeming neglect was only temporary. Toward that end, I want to hear the district's plans for administrator positions at Edina Virtual Academy. I would love to hear that there will be an administrator assigned for each level, elementary, middle, and high school. Failing that, at least a head of school type position for EVA. I would hate for EVA's administration to fall to principals who will be extremely busy running the hybrid model at their schools. It seems to me that would be a recipe for EVA's neglect, even as I love the idea of as much continuity as possible between the hybrid model and EVA. Again, I know that this is all a logistical nightmare and that you need parent choice numbers to move forward. But again, I do think it is possible and in the district's best interests to make these commitments to Edina Virtual Academy's high quality and its students' academic and social development. Thank you again for all you are doing. Megan Feeney.
Thank you, John. In addition to that, I wanted to mention that we did receive quite a few additional emails and questions from both members of the public and teachers about learning this fall. And I want to let any of you know that submitted emails that you would like to be considered for public comment, to please let me or John Schultz know, and we'll read a sampling of them at our board meeting on the 17th. So in the meantime, John, if you could walk through the process the district is taking with all the questions we are receiving from the community, I think that would be helpful.
So as we receive the questions from the community, comments from the community, we kind of, I guess you would say, we triage them to make sure that we have the right direction that it goes, the right journey that it takes. In some cases, we get very specific questions about a school or about a program, about a site, and we or a specific question about a student. Those are directed to the principal that may need to talk to a teacher about that student to support that family. So that's one journey it takes. If there's a question about the programming that we are planning, where we're at, questions about where we're at in the planning stages, the requirements we're following from the state, the programs we're developing as an administration, we turn those over to our communications office. They add those to the frequently asked questions, and we try to answer them the best we can in those, or categorize them under frequently asked questions so we can answer if there's nuance to the question, make sure that we have information to that. And then the other piece would be if there's a very broad question about how we're being directed by the state, I will respond to those questions either through a phone call or through an email. Questions about timeline, questions about I will work with Chair Allenberg in responding to those questions. So we have those those are the four categories we're using in making decisions. We also, some emails have some suggestions for our planning, and those are sent to Assistant Superintendent Smazel and the principals as they do their planning.
Great. Thank you, John. Next, we have a report from our Community Education Services about their summer programming. And so we have a few of the same individuals, actually all of them. We have Val Burke, who's the Director of Community Education Services, Rachel, Youth Programs Coordinator, and Cheryl Gunnis, Community Involvement Coordinator. So welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to see you, members of the school board, Superintendent Schultz, fellow colleagues, and community members. I want to thank you for taking the time tonight to do a sort of an annual recap of community education summer programming. Clearly, summer COVID 2020 gave us some unique opportunities and challenges, and that's why I was very excited, and am very excited, to be able to highlight two of those programs tonight, our school age care program and our enrichment offerings, and the coordinators that oversaw that, Rachel Hicks and Cheryl Gunnis. Just a context, summer is a huge season for community ed in general. It's a time for us to connect with families on a deeper level. Typically, our summer involves about 5,000 to 7,000 families, and we get to introduce them to all the ways that community ed will journey with them through the Edina Public School system, in elementary, in middle school, and up through high school, where we really engage them in service and volunteer opportunities as they become more advocates for their own educational choices. For the summer, this year, we had to take a little bit of a different tact. We weren't even sure in early May if summer programming was going to be an option. We all anxiously awaited direction from the state of Minnesota, MDH and MDE, and when that came in mid-May, Superintendent Schultz gathered a group of us together. You heard from them earlier this evening, Mark DeYoung, Jeff Jorgensen from Special Services, our team here, and Troy Stein from Athletics. And together, cooperatively and collaboratively, we looked at space and health and safety requirements and logistics of timing so that we could provide our families a sense of normalcy and options for learning, growth, and frankly, just plain joy. Really, what summer is for students is a time for them to do exploratory and experiential learning and really dive deeper into things that they love. And so, working together, all four of us, we were really able to provide a variety of those learning and educational opportunities. Although community education is made up of a wider variety of program components, this report tonight will really highlight these two program leaders and their efforts. Again, Rachel Hicks, Youth Programs, and Cheryl Gunnis, Community Involvement. As you listen to these two professionals talk, my hope is that you'll be able to appreciate and better understand what we've been able to provide youth in terms of learning, growth, and connection in planned, safe, and predictable environments. Those two are not always compatible, but this summer they needed to be. Their work has truly helped build community, which is the foundation of our vision, mission, and values, and again, created a sense of normalcy in the middle of the COVID uncertainty. So Rachel?
Thank you, Val. My presentation begins with a feel-good quote from one of our parents. We were fortunate to receive several of these throughout the summer. A parent shared with a recreation leader, quote, "I wanted to send you a quick email to let you know what an amazing day our son had in your group today. He was the happiest kid when I picked him up and told me he had his best day of summer in his life ever, though I am sure there are many more to come this summer. What a difference compared to the past few months." And that was from a Kids Club parent. Our summer registration opened for 2020 on February 18th. We started planning for summer 2020 in November of 2019. 600 plus students were originally registered. March 16th came along and schools closed and programming stopped for all but essential workers. A revised registration for summer went out on May 14th with new mandated guidelines. The team started planning for a whole new summer on May 15th. With the start date of June 8th, the team managed to put together a highly successful summer program in just 3 weeks. Leadership staff worked around the clock to implement safety protocols in a whole new way. Outreach to families on new guidelines around masks, predictability of students' schedules, 4 to 5 days a week were required. Illness monitoring and social distancing occurred. Working with Buildings and Grounds and the summer programming team, we determined that we could manage safely at 2 sites, Concord and Highlands Elementary Schools. After communications with registration families, it was determined that we would serve approximately 100 students at each site for a total of 200 plus students served. Students were grouped with a recreation leader in groups of 10. This was key to the health and safety success of our programming. Each pod created a family. They spent their entire summer with this group. Whatever they did as a group. We created zones in the outdoor areas to ensure safe play happened both indoors and outdoors. Many collaborations with the district happened in order to make this program successful. The first was with our Success program. We worked closely with Mark DeYoung at Concord Elementary to refine, modify, and improve support for students that needed it the most. Easy access to summer success, both in person and through distance learning, happened on site. We helped support over 40 plus students across the district that were also accessing Kids Club and Wise Guys programming. We worked closely with the district technology department to ensure on-site access to Chromebooks, SmartBooks, etc. for both success and classroom access. Consistent technology support provided us with opportunities to create on-site field trips in the classrooms since we weren't able to go off-site. Shown here is one example as a rec leader set up a drive-in movie in their classroom. We also collaborated with Building and Grounds to create cleaning protocols, checklists, and deliver training to staff as new guidelines and processes evolved. Everyone had a job in maintaining the safety for students and staff. Staff were responsible for wiping down surfaces throughout the day and maintaining their shared spaces, while custodians did a deep cleaning at night in all the areas. We were a team throughout the entire summer. One of the biggest highlights from this summer was the staff growth and development. With a large reduction in leadership due to financial restraints in the spring, we spent an extraordinary amount of time working with the staff. We had to build confidence and build our supervisors' skills and creativity. We empowered all staff to grow and learn as we navigated a new way of programming. We also strived for participant satisfaction from both family and students. We received numerous forms of feedback from families and students regarding the wonderful experiences they've had this summer. Some testimonials included from a Concord parent. Thank you for making our lives a little simpler during this time. You guys have put together an amazing program given the circumstances, and we really appreciate it. A Cornelia parent said, you guys are amazing and you deserve to be recognized for the work you've done for all of us over what will go down as the craziest summer of all time. And a recreation leader stated, I've never felt more empowered as a rec leader in any summer I've ever worked. Our biggest takeaway from this summer was that although the bells and whistles of field trips are fantastic, the relationships between students and staff are what bring meaning to what we do. The positive feedback we received from both staff, students, and families has given us renewed energy. We are passionate about providing experiences and creating connections with our students. It was very affirming that we were able to do that once again this summer. Next, Cheryl is going to share some more information about our summer enrichment program.
Thanks, Rachel. So similar to the school age care program, our planning for summer 2020 began in earnest in early November with some staff reorganization and new hires. We opened our registration on February 18th, and by mid-March, we had about $662,000 in revenue and 44,000 registrations for our summer programs. And as I mentioned earlier, this was on track for us to be our summer with the most participation we'd ever had. But with Governor Walz's declaration of a peacetime emergency, the stay-at-home order, and implementation of a distance learning period for Edina schools, our enrichment team too pivoted quickly to start developing online enrichment programs. So during Edina's spring break, we piloted 16 different online classes for youth. These classes, on one hand, provided structure and connection and a sense of normalcy for young people and their families during some very strange times. But more importantly, these pilot programs that we offered online, the very first that we'd ever offered for an enrichment program, also helped our team get familiar with the technology, explore some new teaching and learning strategies for enrichment programs, and we could gather some family and participant feedback that could help us plan our programming going forward. So once the governor authorized safe and effective summer learning for students and issued the guidelines for social distancing in youth and student programs, we felt ready to proceed. We issued refunds for all of the previously planned summer programming, and we spent 2 weeks completely replanning summer with offerings that we felt that we could offer in a safe and predictable way. So a few details about our summer program. Maybe advance the slide. Thank you, Rachel. Our summer 2020 programming was planned in accordance with the constantly evolving executive orders and guidance from the governor, MDH, and Edina schools regarding everything from group sizes, predictable pods, social distancing, cleaning and sanitizing, record keeping, and communication. We offered a total of 11 weeks of summer enrichment programming, and we rolled that out in phases. So we were online only for the first 2 weeks of June. We began offering some in-person classes outdoors beginning June 15th on the Edina Community Center campus. After the 4th of July, we added some more in-person classes, both indoors and outdoors, on the Edina High School campus, and we even experimented with some hybrid options. The majority of our in-person camps were held either 9 a.m. to 12 noon or 1 to 4 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And originally we had planned a much more flexible program that offered a lot more convenience to families. So children could have been dropped off early and stay for lunch, and really people could have made it a whole day, a whole week out of our enrichment programming, but we had to scale that back pretty significantly. And throughout summer, we continued to offer both online and in-person classes each week. But by far, the in-person classes were the most popular, with about 75% of our classes held in person and 25% online. So online examples would be music lessons, driver's ed, watercolor classes, cooking, some French classes. examples of classes we were able to offer outdoors included pickleball, tennis, track and field, cheerleading, golf. And then we also moved many classes that we would traditionally hold indoors to an outdoor setting to improve health and safety. So we had many babysitting classes and magic classes and spy camps held outdoors this summer. Indoors, there was a lot of basketball, volleyball, craft classes, STEM classes, diving, French. And then in terms of hybrid classes, we partnered with our music staff to offer orchestra, concert or marching band, and jazz band. Of course, planning these programs involved extensive partnership and collaboration. To call it just a few, with facilities, we worked hard to determine what spaces would still be open and available this summer during a very aggressive construction schedule, creating fair and equitable space sharing agreements with our internal and external partners, and ensuring that we had some coherent public health requirements for all users. Buildings and Grounds was a huge partner with us in terms of cleaning and sanitizing, managing parking lots, keeping us updated on construction updates. Special education was a fantastic partner for us. They recognized early on that we would be likely to see some challenging behaviors given everything that families and students had lived through. So they created a resource guide for our instructors and staff on topics including normalizing feelings of fear or sadness, icebreakers for groups, de-escalation techniques, and age-appropriate education on public health. And then another partnership I really want to recognize is with Edina Give and Go. They help us remove financial barriers to participation in summer camps. So this year, 78 students were able to register for 163 camps, and combined with Edina Give and Go support and community education scholarships, we offered a combined scholarship total of $28,000 in scholarships. In terms of our enrichment outcomes and the context with the past few years, this summer we were able to offer 286 different course sections. As I said originally, the original summer we had planned, we had over 400 classes set up. We ended with about 3,100 enrollments. Interestingly, by mid-March, we were already well over 4,500 enrollments. Our revenue for this summer, we believe, is going to land right at about $463,000. By mid-March, again, that benchmark was already over $600,000. I think we need to go on to the next slide. And then in terms of our bottom line, factoring in our summer expenses, we are projecting that we'll end the summer at about $49,000 to add to our fund balance, which is significant. Our fund balance, of course, was significantly impacted this spring, and we need our fund balance to allow us to provide programs like the scholarship support to students and support other community education programs like our volunteer program and the Edina Resource Center. In terms of program highlights from the summer, overwhelmingly the feedback on our programs has been very positive. 74% of respondents to our weekly program survey rated their camp experience 9 or 10 out of 10. And the open-ended feedback really reflected our community's appreciation for our efforts too. Many parents were just really grateful that their kids got to be outside and get off their screens and play. Most parents felt very comfortable with the precautions that we had taken. Many families were very happy that we continued to offer the virtual camps. And many families noted how excited they were for the younger students to get to connect with older Edina students. So in terms of things that we did this summer that were maybe necessary because of the conditions, but that we now plan to continue in future summers. This idea of youth leadership is one we have always stressed, but we really took it to a new level this summer. Traditionally, we work with independent contractors to provide a good chunk of our programming. They were more difficult to work with this summer because they want really long lead times. They're not as flexible. And frankly, they're not as comfortable with a lower, like 9-to-1 staff ratios. So we focused on hiring more internal staff, and we hired several recent Edina High School graduates who helped us create and lead many new summer camps. And they gained experience through creating camps like Unicorn Rainbow Ranch, Spy Academy, Olympics Camp. They gained experience in youth development, in program management, in curriculum development, communications, and more. And another example is that we collaborated with the Ping Pong Club to offer a ping pong camp for younger students, and the team used that as a fundraiser. So we really are going to be spending this year fleshing out and growing this idea of youth leadership for our and internships for our high school students for our summer camps. Another thing we instituted because of the conditions was curbside drop-off and pickup. We spent a lot of time in parking lots this summer. And what we realized that it's so much more convenient and less confusing for parents to try to find their way if they can stay in their cars, students can get out, they don't have to get their younger kids or babies out of their cars. We really felt like that was a good innovation that will continue in the future. And we offered online options for the first time this summer, but we realized that families really appreciated this option for a variety of reasons, not only health concerns, but if students weren't able to participate one day, they could do an online makeup. Online options also worked really well as a rain backup location for some classes. So we have heard and we plan that parents want this, families want this, and we plan to continue to offer online options, even if it's not dictated by a global pandemic. So just to conclude, our team grew and learned a lot this summer. We faced many challenges, but I'm really proud of this team's bravery and commitment to our community in the face of so much uncertainty, and their willingness to step out as pioneers really early in this new reality. With our community's help and support, we have shown that it's possible to meet community needs for learning, growth, and connection, and begin to return to civic life in a thoughtful and structured way, while also promoting health and safety as a part of our shared community responsibility. So thank you very much for this opportunity to share a little bit of our summer story, and we'd welcome any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Thank you for all the information. That was great. Do any board members have any questions for the team? No? Janie?
I don't have a question, but I have just a comment, multiple comments. So first of all, I had the pleasure of seeing Rachel in action and seeing what was going on at Concord. And I walked away from there being so proud of the work that she has done and so pleased of what we've been able to offer students. The students were just the happiest, most engaged kids I had seen in a long time, and that was really heartwarming. The other thing is for Mark, I don't know if Mark's still on here, but I'm so happy that Summer Success was still able to be worked into the programming this summer. It was a game changer in our house, and so I have a really soft spot for it in my heart, and I know that there are probably many families that feel the same way, and so I applaud you for being able to get that going. And then I just wanted to say, Cheryl, that I am just blown away by the work that you guys have done to engage not only our youth leaders but also our students this summer. So I just big hats off to Val, to this whole team. Couldn't be prouder of you guys.
I feel the same way. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys so much for all your work this summer and always an outstanding job. So thank you.
Welcome. Thanks for the time.
Great. Okay, we are going to move on to our consent agenda.
Hey, Erica.
Yep.
Yes, can I ask a quick question?
Oh, sorry. Yep.
No, that's okay. I didn't know if it was, I don't know why it didn't come up. I echo what Janie said. It's phenomenal work. One of the things that really stood out to me was your strategy and approach and this kind of inside out, where you guys really worked on protocols and grounds, and like getting the nuts and bolts set so that you were confident with your staff and with the building, and obviously safety as a huge number one priority. And I just wanted to know, like, in your report, I read that, some families wanted a little bit more, I don't know how you worded it. And then some wanted a little bit less in terms of protocols and following protocols. Do you guys know what I'm talking about, Rachel? It was in there, right? Okay. So like, I just wanted to ask and address that. Like, what's your biggest learning from just that point? Because, when we talk about safety, I know there's so many things in this moment that we can't control, but I feel like you guys just knocked it out of the park to control what you could control. And then we're able then to pivot from there. So if you guys could just talk about that for a moment, because I think there's just so much learning in that.
Cheryl, do you want to start?
It's a big topic, and I would say that we spent a very large chunk of our time this summer addressing concerns and trying to get better. I think, like everyone, people's comfort level ebbs and flows from day to day, from week to week. What families are comfortable with, what they're not comfortable with, there is just a very wide range of what people are comfortable with. So all we can do is be really clear, I think, about what we are offering and what we're doing. And again, that I think what's really important is to approach it as this is not one program. This is a community-wide effort. The things that we're doing in our programs are really important. And the things that all of our families and students and community are doing all around us are also really important. And it's just a really complex balancing act. And comfort levels are going to ebb and flow from day to day. And
Julie, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said a lot of this was forefront planning. I think because we were able to walk through the gate and deliver so much information to families right off the bat about our protocols, procedures, things we have in place, and things we're planning for, that we had already walked through so many different scenarios that there was a comfort level that we set up right from the get-go for both staff and students and families that were participating. And I think that was a huge reason for success off the bat.
I'm just going to quickly add one more thought, and because I neglected it in my introduction, is that working with Mary Hyman and this team and Mary Whitey, we kind of broke through some, how do you contact MDH? How can they become your friend? What are some of the pieces that our fall planning team has really capitalized on the work that we were able to do? The simulation exercises that Rachel and her team did, just the let's pretend there's actually something that happened, also I had multiple directors from other districts go, how did you do that? Just so that you could touch it, taste it, feel it, and it wouldn't feel like a surprise. And so I really echo Rachel's comments. It's not, you can control what you can control. And we have fantastic staff here between our buildings and grounds and our health coordinators and our teaching staff and coordinators with community ed, who really work together to try to use each of their own expertises to create those known environments for kids and families. So
thanks, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Julie, can I add one thing too? I was just so impressed with the kids. The kids, in terms of being in the building and asking them to mask up and asking them to social distance and asking them to come back to an experience that was very different from the one they left. The kids they did it. They pulled it off. We had, like Rachel said, we mirrored many of the things that Rachel did, but the kids were great. They were fantastic with it. It was really much harder for the adults to try and wrap our heads around it than it was for the kids.
That's amazing. That's great insight. Thanks, you guys.
Owen, did you have a question or comment?
Mark just answered my question. That was in the tip of my lips. I was going to ask you how the kids did with the compliance and so forth. So that's very good to hear. Thank you.
Great. Anything else from any board members?
Quick question. So just to confirm, for inside workspace, you kept it at 10 students maximum?
Yes, we did a 1-to-9 ratio, so 1 staff and 9 students.
Okay. And then in a regular classroom setting, typically?
Correct. Each of those groups was located in a classroom.
And then what would the maximum number of students you would have inside one building at one time?
We had about 100 registered at each site. The goal wasn't the max amount located in a building, but the max amount located in each individual space. So we never had more than one group in one space for 15 minutes or more at a time.
And they wouldn't cross paths, for example, in hallways. Okay, sounds great. Thank you very much.
Anything else? Well, thank you again for all your hard work. This is great. Really appreciate it.
Great job.
Yep. Okay. Now I'm going to move on to our consent agenda, I think. Is there anything anyone wants to remove from the consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I will now vote by roll call to approve the consent agenda.
Allenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen Friedman.
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved. Thank you. We're now going to have, before we move on to our other discussion items, we're going to have an update on planning for the 2020-2021 school year. So I'll turn it over to you, John, to give the community and board an update.
Thanks, Chair Ellenberg. So we are still in the planning stages for the 2021 school year. I want to talk a little bit about planning itself. I want to give an update on our masking policy, and then I'm going to turn it over to Randy to talk about the Edina Virtual Academy and the planning that's going into that, and talk a little bit about the hybrid. So first of all, the planning is just what it is. It's a plan. One thing I can say is that the plans will change. This planning and what we're planning to do, of course, in a school system, we've never done this before, but we really have a great team that has great ideas in offering a safe and engaging learning environment. And I really want to focus on those two things. The state of Minnesota has asked us first to stay safe using the Hennepin County numbers, and with those numbers, that places us into a hybrid in both the elementary and the secondary. The second level of safety is to make sure that we can deliver the protocols within the building, within the classrooms, for all the programming that we provide. So when we look at the rich and excellent Edina programming, we really have to plan for how we can still deliver that curriculum, those courses to students. So we are still in the planning stages of really figuring out how do we primarily staff this with the talented teachers that we have in the school system. So we are in the midst of doing that. And I think Randy can talk a little bit more, dive deeper into what the Edina Virtual Academy planning is. One of the safety features, as we know, is masking. Social distancing is the prime mover of safety for this. We need to figure out how we do that to keep our students as well as our staff safe in this COVID environment. The masking rule is state law, so it will be a requirement that children and staff wear a mask in the public school setting in the hybrid learning environment. If a student or a parent if a parent doesn't want their child to wear a mask, or if a student doesn't want to wear a mask, or we would then offer them the Edina Virtual Academy if they didn't want to wear a mask. So when they're in the buildings, masking is required. So I'm going to turn it over to Randy to talk a little bit about the Edina Virtual Academy, and then I'll talk a little bit about some timeline and some upcoming dates to pay attention to. So, Dr. Smazel.
Good evening, Chair Ellenberg, Superintendent Schultz, and school board members and community. I just want to give you a little bit of update about our planning work around the Edina Virtual Academy and some of our discussions that we've had recently. We've had about 1,000 students sign up for the Academy as of this morning, just a hair over 1,000 students. And I just want to really start off by saying that the Edina Virtual Academy is not a lesser program model than the hybrid. It really is just different. When we did ask families to, pay attention to this concept of opting out, it was really about opting out for health-related reasons, and that was meant to really, for us to create kind of a clear way to track family intentions, and certainly not to create a perception that it is not as worthy and not as effective. And so we want to be just really clear about that. We are excited about the opportunity, but at the same time, all of this work is really challenging, and I know that our staff and our principals are exhausted. And so we're continuing to pull people together and to work on ideas and work on designs. And we have focused on the hybrid because, to be honest with you, the hybrid model is just so complex to design and deliver. And so it did require a great deal of staff planning time. But as we continue to move forward, we will continue to have an amount of time for planning this Edina Virtual Academy that will make sure we are able to deliver on an outstanding product this fall. In terms of design elements, we kind of go back to grounding ourselves in what kids liked about distance learning. We know that some things went well, some things could have certainly been better. But certainly when we think of big concepts like clarity and connections and feedback, we learned a lot about what worked well for kids and what didn't. And those are specific down to the classroom level or the site level at times, but they're helpful for us in the design of how do you create an engaging online learning environment. And our goal in our design is really to create a similar design to the hybrid model. In other words, approximately the same amounts of face-to-face time and feedback as the hybrid classroom. Our plan is to develop consistency between the hybrid learning and the Edina Virtual Academy learning. We'll use the same instructional framework that we would use in hybrid learning. We will start off the Edina Virtual Academy with an investment in relationship building and connection. That'll sit at the forefront of the experience. It's really important in any situation to really get to know the learners and learners getting to know themselves. And in some cases, that's more challenging when kids are virtual. In other cases, there are things about it that are easier. We'll still use the same standards and same learning outcomes in the Edina Virtual Academy as we will use in the hybrid. We'll use many of the same flipped lessons or activities in both models. And our students in Edina Virtual Academy will still have specials just like the hybrid model. And our scope and sequence of learning curriculum across the district, it will need more attention and discussion than ever before to ensure that we have this continuity and consistency regardless of learning model. Whether it be hybrid or virtual academy. Our goal really is to achieve a balance of live teaching and flipped lessons that are really connected and just really maximize student engagement and learning. And it's going to continue to evolve to take some work to really find what is that sweet spot, that key critical balance that makes kids get the most out of that experience. We could say student social emotional wellness and development will be incorporated into the virtual academy learning experience. And we know that that will also be really important since students will be tying into this remotely. EVA teachers will be in collaborative teams with hybrid teachers to support that consistency and continuity. So the same schedule for teaching planning and preparation and staff development would occur on Wednesdays. So on Wednesdays, we bring our staff together to do training, to do preparation, and to do planning. We would want our EVA teachers to be able to be a part of that. One of the challenging aspects is that the enrollment will impact the design. And so that's a little bit of the horse before the cart and the cart before the horse kind of cyclical conversation that we've been having. But the reality is, depending upon enrollment, we may have to combine students across elementaries or students across secondary schools in some cases. We would make every effort to pair elementary classes by maybe the middle schools that they feed into or combine middle school classes. And at the end of the day, all students do end up at the high school, and maybe some of our students kind of get a head start on making friends that they will be learning with for many years. If the numbers are significant, then we would just run extra sections of EVA from that school. So they would still be with students just from that school. But again, the enrollment will impact how we're able to kind of package this together. We think it's reasonable to target 30 to 40% for live teaching. We've set that as a goal, but we will need to be flexible because age and development and appropriateness for the learner also, they will also play into this formula. We do feel like we'll need oversight of the Edina Virtual Academy. That'll be yet to be determined as it continues to grow or, based on where the numbers are at. We do believe we'll need some type of oversight or coordination of that programming. And we are asking families to commit for a semester. A semester for elementary families would end approximately January 22nd, at which time families would have an opportunity to register for their choice for the second half of the school year. There were some questions. There have been questions about, how easy is it to move from hybrid to EVA? I think it would be, it's difficult for families, for students and families to move from EVA to hybrid. And we're asking families to commit to EVA for a semester. We do think we could offer that movement from hybrid to EVA on an individual basis for health-related or employment-related reasons. I do want to state, though, it's important to note that if this becomes a larger percentage of the student body, then it will make the hybrid offering with staffing changes even more complex for the district to be able to respond to. That's not a super clear answer to that question, but we definitely will be looking at individual cases around that. If it's simply a comfort or a choice, then maybe EVA is the better fit to begin with. And that's why we're asking families to make a choice up front and to make that commitment so that we can plan accordingly. And again, we respect how challenging that decision is for families and the importance of enough specific information to make the best informed decision. We understand that that's what families are trying to do. In terms of preparation, we've explored some different technologies that support connecting students at home with the classroom. Those include some of our virtual meeting tools, but also include things like camera and audio systems and things like that. At the elementary level, we have completed an order for Red Cat audio systems to make sure that we have a Red Cat in place for all elementary classrooms. So that just helps with enhancing audio for those teachers for their particular environments that they have. And we don't want, and part of our preparation is we've really thought about, how much time should students be in live teaching? We definitely don't want kids sitting in front of a screen for 7 hours a day. And so it's really about trying to figure out how to achieve an engaging balance. In terms of preparation, we'll continue to develop some support resources for families to help support learners when they're not at school. And then I'll just summarize by trying to articulate a few of the challenges that we have for both models, the hybrid and the EVA. Our registrations with families are due Tuesday evening. So on Wednesday morning at 9 a.m., we're going to begin pulling the staffing and the registration puzzle pieces together. And we're literally building some new schedules for the year. Now, that doesn't mean all new classes, but we're just trying to figure out where students are going to be and which teachers are going to be teaching what. We know that we need a web of support for kids when they're not in school, and getting kids connected to school while at home is kind of a technological equity challenge. And so it's really important to make sure kids can get connected when we are doing live teaching. And obviously that technological challenge varies dependent upon age and developmental readiness. We know that for families who have selected the hybrid as the learning model, there might be some situations where, because of the enrollment in a particular class, like at a secondary level, we might have to offer a class all virtual or all online. So even though the family signed up for hybrid, it could be that they have a class in the schedule of the student that is part of the virtual learning environment solely. And that just will depend as we are trying to work through these schedules. For families selected EVA, we'll look at we offer a tremendous number of electives at our secondary level, and we'll try to honor all of those electives in the schedule. But again, there may be scheduling issues that make that a challenge depending upon what our enrollment looks like as we proceed. Normally, when we would do registration, we would normally have a cutoff for the number of students that sign up for a class before we offer it. But we realize, of course, that those offerings have already been produced and the staff have already been aligned to that. So now it's a matter of trying to figure out how to make these puzzle pieces work together. We know that our teachers need a lot more time than they would typically need at the start of a school year. We're asking them to build a lot of online content and a lot of online lessons and activities, and to build out a course that is flexible and adaptable so that if we do shift to more of a remote learning situation for all, that they can do that in a fairly seamless way. But this is a different kind of lift for our teachers and our principals than any school year, than at the beginning of any school year. We are asking a lot of our staff, and we know we're asking a lot of our families at this time of year as well. Our elementary schools will also be hosting childcare for children of Tier 1 workers, and that will impact space. We'll need paras to support that on the days that the students are not in front of their classroom teachers. We know from Jeff Jorgensen's update last Thursday that IEPs need to be developed for different types of learning scenarios with children that are receiving special services, and that needs to be done at the beginning of the year. And that is much more complex than our process has ever been. That's going to just take additional time to complete. I do want to say that this is all very complex and stressful for our teachers, our principals, and our families. We're hearing that. We'll continue to collect questions. We'll offer answers as we can derive those, and we will continue to problem solve, continue to listen. Each of our sites will be holding a Q&A meet sessions for available staff to work through some of the challenging staffing puzzle pieces this week. And we know that our teachers are not back for another 2 weeks yet. So it's the available staff that will be able to dial in now, and we'll have to catch other staff later. Our new teachers are coming back in a week. What an amazing adventure they have signed up for. And we're very excited for their arrival of over 60 new teachers to the district. You'll see on this board agenda this evening that we've proposed some calendar revisions, which I believe would provide the necessary time to make sure we have a quality launch to both of these models. I personally don't believe we can provide the preparation needed for these two models without that additional time for what we're asking our staff to do and complete. And then lastly, we're going to have to be nimble and adaptive and flexible this year, as new COVID test results could push us in another direction as a district. Numbers go up, we might be phasing in more remote learning time, and as numbers go down, we would be phasing more students back into schools, as John has already previously mentioned. So those are a few of the updates related to the programming. At this time, I'll turn it back to Chair Ellenberg.
Let me just finish with, and thank you, Randy. That was great. Mary, do you want to just talk just a little bit, just a communications update, and kind of how you're thinking about communications? This, as Randy indicated with the complexity, this is continues to be a moving target. So things emerge in our planning, and it's been our commitment, and Mary's done a great job of pushing out information and decisions as we move forward. So Mary, do you want to say anything more about just the communications?
Sure, I will. Thank you very much. And good evening, everybody. So last week, we may have blown up some parent inboxes during the course of the week. The superintendent communicated on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and it was primarily around the release of the information about the learning models. And on Wednesday, we announced that we originally had asked for a decision by Sunday evening. And then on Friday, we pushed it back because, as Randy said and John has said, we've received so many questions and we just want to provide as much clarification as we can so that people can make a decision that they feel comfortable with. So additionally, last week on Tuesday, kindergarten families received some information from the elementary principals. On Thursday, Troy sent information out about athletics and activities. The e-newsletters kicked in again on Thursday, and parents also received on Thursday a reminder of the making their decision and how to do that on the portal. And then also during the course of the week, new families received their portal credentials in the mail so that they can get at the portal and make their decision and some of the other information that we're seeking from them. On the website on Monday, we opened up the learning model pages that provide some background information about both the learning models. And then we also opened the family dashboard. And I think on Monday, we just had 2 buttons. By the end of the week, we had 6. And the multilingual learner team is, I know, still working. I received an email from them today. So we're still working on trying to make sure that everybody has the information they need and can make the decision that's best for their family. For staff, last week, Nikki communicated, an email went out to all staff with the preference form and a flow chart. And then we opened the employee dashboard as well. So we have an employee-specific FAQ and some forms. And then we've also provided them with links to the safe learning spaces, the COVID monitoring, the mental wellness, and then the learning models as well. So going forward, today we added the nutrition services button to the dashboard. So we have a few more buttons that we'll be working on technology, childcare. Of course, that's a little ways down the road till we know some more numbers. And of course, the academics. So once Randy and the instructional team have got things set in place, we've got some nice green academic buttons that are by grade level and one for the EVA program that will help people see where they should go now to make their next steps, their schedules, that sort of information. And then we'll be shifting now this week to families receiving information from their schools. We've kind of been holding the reins back because, like I said last week, there was information going out every day and everybody is very focused on the learning models, which is kind of the key piece of information we need right now. So I really ask the principals to hold on talking about the back to school plans and the events and the virtual things that they're planning for that. But tomorrow afternoon, and I think later in the week, some of that information is ready to start flowing out. So families will begin to get that. And then we've got our district back to school page too that we'll be updating and probably adding a back to school button on the dashboard. So that's all those pages are easy for families to find. So that's kind of where they're at. I mean, I know there's a lot of communication ahead, but as Randy said, communication's kind of bats cleanup. We come in when the other work is done, then we get to work because we have the information that needs to get pushed out to families and the various ways and tools that we have. So we're ready for the next steps.
Well done, Mary. Thank you. So as Mary indicated, tomorrow is the due date for parents to elect one of the models. We do have a board meeting set for August 17th. I do want to let the board know and the public know that as we continue to do the planning this week, we start looking at the staffing. If I feel that the plan, the program isn't clear enough to present to the board, I'm going to ask that we also reserve the 20th of August, which I believe is Thursday. Is that right? And have that as just a date out there. So the 17th and the 20th would be 2 days that we would use for. I think the 17th the board approved as a meeting for tonight, moving the 18th to the 17th. But I would ask the board and let the public know that the 20th could be a date too. But we'll push out information when that approval happens. And then it's after that, it's from the 20th, it's another 18 days then to the start of the school if the board approves the later start of school. So I still want to encourage parents to continue to ask questions so we continue to provide information and clarify the program. I hope tonight helped to clarify the EVA, and I'll leave that as an update for our 2021 school year, Chair Allenberg.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Schultz. Do board members have any comments? Ellen?
Yeah, I have a couple comments. And this is in general, I really, first I want to appreciate all the time that everyone has been given to this. I understand that it is a lot of time, and I can appreciate the time and the work and the thought. So my comments are really with respect to I wanted to make sure that the administration understood my perspective. In the past, I've been just responding to the models that were presented to me with questions so that I could understand what's being presented. And I feel that in order for me to be upfront with who I am and what I'm about when I look at models, I wanted just to make sure that you heard where I was coming from. And so my perspective is that I know that this is the perspective of the boards too. The rest of the boards is safety is first. But I can't underscore what that means to me and what I would be looking for in approving a plan with respect to safety. And I was delighted to hear that John said that he would uphold a face mask policy, that no one would be within our buildings without a face mask. That's what he was saying, and I think that parents would like to hear that as well. But I also am concerned about some other elements of the plan with respect to the maintaining of cohorts, the isolation of those cohorts. As we heard, that was done so well in our summer programming. I would want to make sure that our district is taking equal effort in maintaining cohorts in the elementary schools as the other models are developed. So that's one piece that I would be looking for in a plan, is that cohorts are kept apart from when children are getting on their way to school to when they get back home. Because honestly, if there's a mixing up of students, the risk increases to all students. Likewise, I'm very concerned about our secondary plan, which has students going from class to class in a building and not being kept isolated in a cohort. So I'm concerned about that. I know that when you look at colleges, they are all being incredibly careful, and they are saying, no, we really need to keep all students apart or in small cohorts, or we aren't going back to school. So this is a question all districts and at all levels are trying to deal with. But when I think about the safety of teachers and of students, when there's that much intermingling, I'm very concerned about that. And I just don't think it's worth the risk. So there's that aspect of a plan. And then I'm going to speak to academic development and social development of our youngest students. And I would say that I would be looking for a plan where teachers are actively teaching our youngest students every day. And that direct instruction is so important. We had a time, the board recently studied time, and we literally, it's something like 4.5 hours of direct instruction of core academic material every day is what we were told by our administrators is needed. And I feel equally that we don't have a year to waste when it comes to reaching our kids and trying to develop the best programs that we can in order to give them that. And if it's not face-to-face, then at least it would be in a synchronous environment, whether that's streaming or just simply synchronous on something like a Zoom. But those are my biggest concerns. It's first that we have developed plans that are going to be safe if we are implementing them, because we are responsible for our community as well. So I would like to make sure that my thoughts on these are heard. I'm not really responding to the plans that were presented to me. I'm giving you now my own personal opinion on what I would be looking for. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. We'll keep that all in mind. Of course, the safety and of our students and our staff are of utmost in these times. And we will continue to offer the academic, social development that Edina is used to having for their children.
Matt?
Hi, sorry about that. So I want to thank the very thorough update from all the administration that just took place. I just had 2 items. The first one is, how can we describe to the community, some people were on last week, some weren't, how do we describe the cadence for rejuggling? So there's obviously going to be the element of whether or not COVID spreads more or less, whether or not a vaccine comes out at what point. But for instance, if the per case number dropped below 20 for 1 week from MDH, we wouldn't send all the kids back. If it cycled the next week, we wouldn't bring them all home again. So just can we give an update just so people think about what are the timeframes in which we're making decisions?
So the governor, in changing from one program to another, we don't need to pivot on the moment when that data changes. I think we have 2 weeks to respond to that.
Okay. So we're going to follow the MDH data updates in coordination with the health authorities and look at this on a bi-monthly basis.
Actually, it would be a weekly. Those numbers come out weekly on Thursdays.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Just want to make sure everybody's level set there. And the second item is just resource-based. Again, I want to commend all the work taking place. And by de facto, this entire plan means we're running 2 schools off the same number of limited resources that we've been working through as a strategic plan to run 1 school, meaning the Virtual Learning Academy and the hybrid model. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that's on this call that there's a balance going on between communicated and between operating the schools. And in the sense of that, you'll see even later in our agenda, we're doing 2 new bond issuances in the next 12 to 24 months that are looking to refinance to save us money, as well extension of current services that we currently have. So we have many work sessions. We had one before this one for over an hour and a half talking about some of the things you're going to be hearing throughout the next stage of the discussion around strategic plans, around the current priorities. And I think that the goal for this meeting was to make sure that people heard how much thought went into the virtual academy. Because last meeting, what it felt like was we came into the last school board meeting where there were 200 and some people on the YouTube webcast looking to hear about all the options, and we really focused on safety. And then this time we took a step back and focused on both the virtual learning academy offering and then a by segment educational offering for hybrid. But I don't want people to leave this meeting and saying, well, there was very little discussion of safety, because there have been hundreds of meetings leading up to this one, including individual work sessions that have taken place. So the 2 things I just wanted to make sure everybody was clear on were the level setting around time when this would be revisited, and also the number of meetings and care that's going into the plan from a safety perspective and a communication perspective. So those are the 2 things that I wanted to comment on, but I appreciate the full update.
Thank you, Matt. Any other comments from any board members? Julie?
Yeah, I just have one. So just to, I like how Matt framed up, we are running with the same amount of resources trying to run 2 systems, right? Which we're aware of, and it's an incredible amount of work. What is the confidence level? And you might not be able to answer this, but just something I want to make sure is the confidence level with our staffing and where our teachers are sitting with this. And if they choose to be part of the Edina Virtual Academy, do they feel they can still deliver that content and curriculum, and they're still, we hold our teachers and they hold our students to high standards of educational excellence. And so I just want to do a temperature check on where our teachers are sitting with all this. And I know that, they're not back officially for another couple weeks, but I know we've gotten a lot of feedback from teachers too. And so I wanted to throw that out there. If you're not ready to answer that, that's okay too. But that's where my thoughts are now, are just the teacher confidence.
Yeah, we're not ready to answer that. We're still collecting the data from the teachers at this point. So,
that's fair.
The of Edina teachers is always strong and cooperative, and we'll continue to work with them in the safety protocols and in providing the resource they need to teach.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Janie or Lenny, anything? Or Owen? No? Lenny?
So I just think that we've got a little bit more data to collect, and then we'll have a clearer picture. So I do appreciate the update tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much for the update. If board members do think of questions after this, please send them to John, because he can also insert answers to board questions. I'm sure that anything the board is wondering, the community also wants to know. So if you think of something you would like an answer for, email John with your question, and we'll fold them into the FAQs and make sure that the community gets answers to those as well. So thank you for the update. I appreciate it, and all the hard work. And I also realize that we're stuck in this paradigm where it's like putting the cart before the horse and the horse before the cart, and it feels we're sort of going zigzagging between communicating, planning more, communicating, planning more. So there is a realization from both the admin and board that how, I'm sure it's frustrating at times as a parent, but we are trying, like I think I said last time, we're trying to get out as much information as we know it. And I think a big step will be when we understand the staffing and how staffing is or is not affecting anything from a planning perspective. So I think Owen?
Yes, Erica, just one comment I want to throw out is our community is diverse and has all sorts of opinions and reflects society in general. And there are some families that would like to go full on 4 or 5 days of instruction. And I think that there's a little confusion in the community as to why we can't do that. And it has been alluded to tonight, but I'm just going to spell it out explicitly. We have thresholds that we have to reach, and we are not at a threshold that permits that of COVID counts per 10,000. And we're measuring that off of our county, not off of our city. And so I think that there are some who would like to have that kind of instruction. We've had some conspicuous groups such as the American Academy of Pediatricians and the CDC have both recommended full face-to-face instruction 4 to 5 days a week. But at this point, we can't do that. But as I think John said, we could at some point do that, but we're not at that point right now. So I just wanted to offer that that elaboration, Erica.
Thank you, Owen. Ellen?
Yeah, Owen, I just wanted to respond to that a little bit because I have been trying to figure out the executive orders, and I was at a meeting last Wednesday with Jan Malcolm, and I asked her if schools were required to follow the base models set out in the Back to School plan from the governor with respect to counts, and she said, quote, "We would recommend that you think about the governor's guidelines as a starting point for the conversation." So what she said is that it is to be a consultative process with school board members, bargaining units, staff, students, and families. So it is those. I want to make sure, Owen, and the people listening, it is a starting point. So it's not as if those numbers, when you hit a certain number, it is going to trigger necessarily that our district will change, but it's a starting point. Our district can't change if we don't have the staffing or don't have the facilities. It is not going to change if we don't have all the things that can happen to make a safe environment for our families. So, and likewise, if we feel that we have those in place and can use and can manage that, then we could go to every day, just as we're looking at not a hybrid for kindergarten, but we are looking for every day in kindergarten. So, and I would suggest we as a district should be looking at an every day for elementary as to the extent possible. And so I'm mentioning that because we've been talking about the key counts, and I think that isn't exactly what is written in the executive order.
Matt?
Yeah, just to go just very quickly on those 2 points. Everybody theoretically would like to get back to having students in school as soon as it's safe. The CDC and American Pediatric Association said there are incredible negative consequences of not having kids together. So all 7 of us in administration would like to get there as soon as possible. It is guidance. At the same time, if you're on a golf course and there's lightning, people will come out and say, get off the course, but they're not going to give you handcuffs and pull you off, but you're liable. So it's our, responsibility to make sure we're putting kids, families, and teachers and staff in the safest position. So I want to make sure we don't go down some path in which suddenly Edina doesn't have to follow guidance, and why don't we just pick a path or get kids back? This is not just guidance. This is legal and structural liability and medical health data from the state dictating what districts should do. So we are working within the confines of being the third of a 4 color-coded grid that came out at the end of July for us to follow. Within that framework, we're running 2 systems, and we're going to be looking at that now. I understand data every Thursday with a 2-week rolling or 2-week lagging indicator to determine how to adjust the hybrid and virtual learning models. So I just want to make sure that the clarifications are really good in some respects, but I want to make sure we don't have anybody confused that the districts really are just being told, do whatever you want. Here's a color-coded grid. It's much stronger than that. And the meeting we had last week had officials from Bloomington Health System that we're working very closely with to, as Ellen said, make sure that we have all of those triggers and safety protocols in place. As soon as we're able to start bringing back more kids safely, that is the bend that the Owen's correct, the CDC and APA are recommending.
Lenny?
I just want to note that the recommendation to have kids back is provided it's a safe environment. There's no recommendation that we simply open the schools. And so to the extent that that's interpreted, I don't think that's accurate.
Ellen, did you have anything to add?
Right. And I was just going to say that also part of the executive statement was that at any time our district can act in a way that is more safe than what the guidelines suggest. So, for example, the numbers might say that we are all for hybrid model for both secondary and primary. The executive orders also state that it could be that we choose as a district not to do that. And I just wanted to make that clear too, that throughout all of these, if we wanted to take a more cautious position, that's actually stipulated in the order.
Any other comments from anyone? No? Great. Thank you guys for the update on this. And I'm sure we'll have more questions and more opportunities to communicate about this. So thank you. We're now going to move on to our discussion portion of our agenda. And I believe we have 3 items up for discussion. The first are strategic priorities regarding superintendent and board goals. And so I basically wanted to update the community that we had a work session just prior to this where we walked through a fairly comprehensive list of issues and initiatives that we have talked about undertaking as a district, or maybe it was from last year and we didn't get to it. And so we went through a prioritization process that we need to anyway, but there's a whole added dynamic, obviously, of our crisis planning and pandemic planning. And so from the work session that we had, we both as administration team and as a board agree that our priority this year is what we've talked about tonight, which is ensuring the safe rollout of our pandemic planning for the year. So making sure it's safe, making sure our students are getting the education that they need. And that has to be our number one priority. It's going to take a lot of effort on behalf of everyone in our administration, all of our teachers. And so there's concern on everyone's part of putting too much on top of that. So we cannot take our eye off the ball for that. We obviously at the same time have a strategic plan, and we realize that we can't not work on certain things going on. And so we prioritize the 3 things from the strategic plan to focus on this year: our literacy work, equity work, and intervention programs, and they all go along with each other. And the board goals really mirror what we feel John's goals should be, which is, as a board, how do we monitor progress with the pandemic planning? Are there measures that we need to look into to ensure that students are meeting their goals? And then in addition to that, the equity issue, the literacy and the intervention, how do we support those as a board? A couple additional things we talked about as a board is monitoring, which I alluded to earlier, but really monitoring and measuring not only this, but our strategic plan initiatives, and then talking about how can we become more effective as a board. So those things will be outlined, and there'll be an actual document in the next meeting, but I wanted to give an overview of what we did just talk about. Does anyone from the board have anything to add or any context to what I just went over? No? Okay. So that is it for the strategic priorities. Now we're going to move on to policy review, and I'll turn it over to Owen, who's the chair of our policy committee, and you can take it from here.
All right. Thank you, Erica. Well, as policy committee members, we are tasked with reviewing the district's policies. Policies are grouped in sets of 100, and we have the commission of going through series 400 and 900 this year, personnel and community relations. In just a moment, we're going to look at that. But before we do, we want to talk a little bit about equity. We had committed at our last school board meeting, regular meeting, that the policy committee would talk about equity as it relates to policies. And it's a part of our strategic plan. Recent events have forced it to the fore. And so we spent a good bit of time at our policy meeting on Wednesday talking about equity as it relates to the Edina school district policies. And we wanted to come up with a game plan for going forward and creating a structure that we could frame up our discussion of equity as it relates to our policies. And with some help from Nikki Tusher, our new director of HR, who is our administrative liaison, we have come up with a plan, which will be that we are going to form subcommittees of color in 3 domains: employees, students, and parents. And Nikki will be reaching out to first employees of color and creating a 3-4 member committee. And we want all 3 of these committees to give us a sense of what, as a district, we could do to improve our delivery of educational services and sensitivity, everything associated with equity in this coming school year. So Nikki will be doing that. We'll hear a report at our policy committee meeting next week about that, and next month. And so our first goal is to then, once we get some direction from these subcommittees, to identify specific policies that are prominent that we want to give special attention to and prioritize those. So that's the general direction. And because of the significance of this, what I also wanted to do is to take a moment and turn the discussion over to Julie Green for a little bit to give us some more background on what our goals will be this year regarding equity.
Thank you, Owen. Yeah, I'm on the policy committee with Owen, just for everyone else who's watching from home. And I'm going to give you a slightly different perspective on kind of what we've talked about. As Owen said, we know that it's imperative that we have multiple voices in our community, students and families, employees, staff, teachers, so that we can really listen and make sure that we are doing equity work that's purposeful. When it comes to policy, policy is really kind of the rudder. We talked about this. It's the rudder of our school system in a lot of ways. But I think it's really imperative that as we approach this equity work, that we're not siloed in that also. So, we talked about making sure that the community knows and that our district knows and our staff and administration and teachers and students that this is an ongoing conversation. I think that one of the things that is going to be important is as we really bring our equity work, which is already a priority in our strategic plan, and it was identified in our work session earlier, one of the priorities for us to work on as a board and for Dr. Schultz to work on as well, is to make sure that we are reflecting policy as it's seen in practice. And so I just want to make sure that anyone listening that we aren't we aren't going to, our approach to equity, we still have a lot of work to do in how we're going to approach it and what that process is. So policy is one starting point, but it is not the entirety of the important work that's going on. The other thing that I just wanted to say too is that if we are going to make change, which there are areas that we need to improve on. We know this, our community knows this, the world knows this. We have to move the needle. In order to do that, we need buy-in from the board, and we need to have a really clear direction so that we can build trust and give support and guidance to our students and our teachers to make sure that this work is important. So we are working through a lot of things. I just wanted to give a different perspective, slightly than Owen, coming at kind of how we approach policy in lieu of the equity work that we're charged with. So I'll hand it back to you, Owen.
Okay, Julie, thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right. Well, then, getting down to some practical items right here, right now, we have before us two groups.
Owen?
Yes.
Sorry, Lenny and Ellen both had a comment they wanted to make.
Oh,
Lenny, go ahead.
So these subcommittees, I think that your initial plan was that they would report back to the policy committee. I wonder whether you wouldn't consider those subcommittees reporting back to the full board. I think that equity tends to be a pretty important area, and that might be an area that I would be inclined towards coming back to the board with the subcommittee reports and then going back to policy. So think about that.
Okay. Yeah, you know what, Lenny, can I just respond to that? That's exactly right, is that any kind of committee work that we would do, it needs to be looked at as our whole system, our whole educational system. And policy is one of those. And so I think we have to do more discussion as a board on what that actually looks like in setting up, and discussion with our administrators to see what makes the most sense. So I agree with what you're saying, that it's not just pulling people to say, hey, what policy should we change? We have to take a broader approach. So just wanted to respond.
Thank you. Ellen?
Yeah, I'm really interested in hearing a little bit more about how this is going to be developed. I think it's an excellent idea to bring in the voice of all people. So I think it's truly an excellent idea. According to policy, subcommittees need to be approved by resolution. So I would recommend that the policy committee keep working on this excellent idea, and then come back to the board with a proposed resolution for how this will work. Both the scope and scope and function of this new subcommittee.
That's an excellent idea, Ellen. And Lenny, we did entertain the idea of bringing it before the whole board. So, okay, good. I think we will talk about both those items at our next policy meeting, and we are committed to spending a hunk of time every policy meeting to talking about equity. So, any other discussion on equity as it relates to the policy committee? Okay, well then now, sorry about that, Lenny and Ellen, I will plunge into talking about the policies that we have before us right now. We have two groups of policies before us for discussion. The first are rapid review. These are policies 401, 402, 403, 404, and 405. These deal with personnel issues. And Nikki did us the service, Nikki Tusher, of evaluating these policies for any language changes against our model language in MSBA language, Minnesota School Boards Association. And she found only minor language changes, and those are what are before us tonight to discuss. Most of the changes are either stylistic or just to bring us up with in compliance with state statute. She does recommend that we drop the appendices and use a generic appendices on policy 404 and 405. And if you'd like to talk about that, she is here tonight too. So so we're just recommending that we move forward with that. But if you'd like to talk, we can.
Does anyone have any comments? No? All right, I think we're ready to move on.
Okay, so then that will come up for vote action next month. Now we have policy 601, which appeared before us last year just in the natural cycle of policy review, but it also came up as a specially amended policy toward the end of the calendar year. And we revised that at the beginning of this year. And as an extension of that, there is an initiative to change some of the language and substance of policy 601. In addition, we have some changes that are also bringing the policy up to statutory compliance and a few wording changes. But there are some pretty substantial changes to it. And what I would like to do is invite Julie Green again to provide us with some elaboration on it as a member of the policy committee. She was also involved with Lenny in the larger committee work that was associated with revising 601. So, Julie, I turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Owen. So this policy 601, there has been some changes. I want to take a minute and just go over and give some more explanation about the process and where we are. So consistent with what happened in January and the activity around policy 601 that it was rescinded is that a subcommittee was formed with teachers and administrators and some board members, Lenny and myself and Owen. And we have really worked through and tried to respond to the feedback, not just from the community, but from teachers and administrators on this policy. I think the most important thing is the goal of policy 601 is really to establish that broad curriculum parameters. And it's got to include both local and state Minnesota academic standards, right? And so one of the things that we wanted to make sure was that this policy was clear in delivering educational excellence for all students through our educational programs. And so one of the things that is important to note is that this policy was not created, and the edits that were made were really in partnership with work that Deb Richards has done with Gifted and Talented Services and with NewMats out of Northwestern University, which is a gold standard for our educational excellence and with gifted and talented students and moving ahead. In addition, the Minnesota Council of Gifted and Talented work, and then also the National Council of Gifted and Talented. So this is feedback from our teachers and administrators that we put into this, and then also from the community to give more clarity. The other thing I wanted to address is MSBA has some model policy, and that model policy, we looked at that and it was very different than the way that our policy 601 is set up. And part of that is that it was a lot of language about meeting statute, and it was hard to really find clarity in how this actually looks in the classroom and for our teachers. And so after a lot of different discussion, we stuck with the original policy and then shifted it to make sure that we were incorporating the main changes, the K through 12 talent development framework that gives all students different pathways to success. And so that's what you see here. I don't know if anyone has any specific questions. The other piece too I want to mention is that it was also looked at in light with our new strategic plan that was approved in June. And so we really looked through to make sure that the priorities for educational excellence was incorporated with this. And Yeah, so I don't know if anyone has any questions. I know Randy is on. He has worked closely with this policy and developing it to where we're at. So that's it.
Ellen?
Yeah, I actually have a couple questions, more than a couple, and I wanted to just make a couple observations. So the revisions to Policy 601 that were passed by the board in November of 2019 sought to put in writing the district's commitment to preserve its current offerings of enriched and honors classes at the secondary level and to expand those offerings. As you know, that version of 601 was rescinded earlier this year, and as I read this proposed further revision to 601, I don't see the language that reaffirms the district's commitment to the currently offered honors classes or enriched classes, nor do I see a commitment to the advanced learning in the elementary, nor any expansion of those offerings. Depending on how one interprets the proposed revised policy, one could read the new language to allow elimination of all of those classes. And I don't think that that's what the district is after. So I am concerned by the way that this is written. And I believe that the last summer's revised policy 601 developed by the policy committee with administration representatives present was an attempt to stop the district's perceived retreat and from serving the needs of the advanced learners. And it was by some considered elitist because minority students are underrepresented in our honors classes. My perspective on that criticism is that the district does not improve equitable representation and participation in advanced learning opportunities by removing those opportunities from all students. Rather, the district should maintain its commitment to advanced opportunities and should address those root causes of inequitable participation by providing more on-ramps to those opportunities, identifying advanced learners earlier, and enhancing the appeal and equitable enrollment into those classes. That is part of our strategic plan. So I do understand what NewMat says. I actually attended Minnesota Department of Education seminar on equitable gifted programming. And they said that by simply removing honors classes doesn't bring equity.
Can I interrupt really fast? That there nowhere in this is there a proposal of removing honors classes or doing anything. And so I think that we need to be very careful articulating things like that, because that is not in this policy. It's not in our strategic plan. And I think we have to be careful with the language that we use when talking about the district removing classes, because that is not at all up to be discussed or an option.
Well, to be honest, that was what was removed from 601. When 601 was when the additional language, which was meant to preserve the current classes, if the intent of the district was not to remove those classes, the current classes could have been left in that policy.
So I think we have a disagreement about the best way to write the policy. I don't think there's any disagreement amongst the board or the administration that this is a signal that we're removing classes and don't have a commitment to academic excellence and honors classes. So I think that whereas you have the opinion it needs to be written there to show a commitment, other people don't. And so there's a difference of opinion on how to write policy, but I think we need to be very careful about stating that there's anything indicated in this policy that shows less of a commitment to advanced learning. So
this current board removed the language,
okay.
not just of the proposed classes, but of
I understand that, Ellen, and I think that
Ellen, I think you're making an assumption right now, and I want to highly caution you against that. I think this board may have taken language out of a policy because it did not feel that tactic was well served as language in the policy. It did not vote to take away honors classes. And as far as I know, that's not something that has ever even been on the table. So I really want to caution you from making that assumption right now, because as far as I know, that is not and was not a part of the reason for what appears to be an expansion of offering more enrichment, more extended learning, and more opportunities to more students. And so I want to, it's really hard to listen to you make that assumption when that isn't something that's on the table.
Well, I'm so glad to hear both such a vehement rebuke for my assumption. Because if that is in fact the case, then this is a recording, so that this board does not feel that it wants to remove honors class, the current honors classes. I'm delighted to hear that.
So Ellen, I'm just going to interrupt you and turn it over to Lenny because other board members want to contribute to the conversation. Go ahead, Lenny.
I really just wanted to note that we've invested funds in providing advanced academic offerings without specifically calling it out in a particular policy. And so having a history of providing advanced offerings, significant advanced offerings, without requiring it in a policy, I don't see any need to have a policy set out and direct specific classes to be offered. We know what we've done as a district. We're going to continue to offer these classes. It shouldn't come as a surprise that this board continues to support advanced academics, and any suggestion that it is a surprise that this board, I think, is inappropriate.
Well, I'm just calling out the fact, and I'm looking at what's written here, and it doesn't. So first of all, this is slightly different than what was presented to last October to the District Advisory Council for Gifted and Talented. So I'm just going to mention that. That's why at the beginning of the meeting, and I'm really sorry, I honestly feel that this is a better conversation for some other night. I'm going to maybe. I might ask too many questions. I'm really sorry, but this is a conversation that I think many people were very engaged in last year. And the fact that I'm here at 9:15 at night with looking at this and trying to make some sense out of what the district wants us to talk about. I'm sorry that I'm taking board time tonight to do that, but it might take a little while, and I do think that the community is interested.
So Ellen, I'm just going to interrupt you right there. I think that we can entertain maybe about 10 more minutes of conversation on this, because we have multiple agenda items to get through, and we need to be done with our agenda by 10 o'clock. And so I think you can ask, I think we can stay on this topic for about 10 more minutes. If there is a need for additional conversation after that, then we can certainly think about putting this into a work session. But we need to get to our action items. And so if we need to move along, but please feel free to talk about this for the next 10 minutes or so.
Okay, it appears that for acceleration, so for the out of typical learning sequence, that the only courses that are available, or what is what is unclear about this is this, are we going to be offering, and what they're called pathways, but I would call them experiences, because pathways has a different, we're offering enrichment experiences, we're offering extended learning, acceleration, and authentic learning. It is unclear if those are going to be offered to all K-12 students. Is that what it appears that that's what this framework is? Is that true?
Randy, do you want to talk to that?
Yep. Thank you. So this is a K-12 framework. And when we worked with Northwestern University on the design of this, what we're looking at is how do you grow talent in all kids? And are accelerated or advanced classes part of the model? Yes, they're part of the model. They're not the only part of the model, though, as well, because there are things that can happen in a classroom. Then there are things that can happen across a program. And we want to make sure that we have a framework that allows us to grow the ways in which we develop talent in our kids, wherever kids are at on that talent development continuum. That's where we're starting. So if they're really advanced, we want to make sure we continue to push them and grow them, because all learners should be growing and have opportunity in the district. So there are parts of this framework that apply to in the classroom, and then there are parts of this framework that apply to the design of programming. And so when we say accelerated learning, that's a great example of making sure kids have access and opportunity, if they are ready for the pace, for advanced learning opportunities. So that might look like advanced courses, but the enrichment could also be advanced courses. What we're trying to do is design the framework of what we want the outcomes to be, not design exactly how the teachers need to achieve that. But I do look at it and say this is inclusive of enriched or accelerated or advanced coursework, but it goes far beyond that. And in working with Northwestern University, I think we have a real good opportunity to do some training with staff in the district, with our lead team, even with our board, about this idea of how you do talent development.
So the answer is throughout, from starting in kindergarten, because we have parents that wanted additional services starting kindergarten, first grade, second grade, we had some, but that is what I'm hearing is, are we going to be offering acceleration, which is above grade level standards, taught at a faster pace? And is that going to be offered with direct teacher instruction?
So I think, can I recenter the conversation a little bit? Because I think that we're getting into tactics and this is a policy. And so
I'm reading from the policy. I'm reading exactly what is the appendix.
So just 1 second, Ellen. So if there are questions about how this will be implemented across like what grade, I think that we need to have a further discussion about the gifted and talented framework in and of itself. And that needs to be done at a different time. I don't think that Randy nor anyone in the administration is equipped to say, this is exactly what's going to happen in kindergarten. This is what's going to happen in first grade. This is what's going to happen in second grade, but that this is a plan. It gives a framework around it. So that's what it is right now. It's a framework. Owen?
First off, Lenny, did you get a chance to talk? I want to make sure you did.
Yes, I tend to be brief.
Okay. Basically, I'm going to be brief too. And we could very quickly enter a redo discussion of what we had back in October and November, and I don't intend to do that. But just for the record, I am, in essence, in agreement with the spirit of what Ellen has been saying. And I think what this new initiative reveals and exposes that many already know in the community, that there is a philosophical fault line in the district, that some of us agree and very much like separate ability grouped classes for honors and enriched students, however you want to describe it. Others believe that that is not the best way to pursue it. And those in that camp, I think, will embrace what this new 601 pathways policy is espousing. And I don't belong to that camp. I belong more to the camp that believes in separate classes, and both philosophical camps have their research, empirical, scientific, and so at any rate, if people want to hear more of my thoughts on this, they can review the transcripts from October, November. But if we do want to dive into this, perhaps we should have another meeting. But I don't know. I think it's pretty well. I think I pretty well have an understanding of where the seven of us fall on this.
Go ahead, Lenny.
So I disagree, Owen, that there's this split. I think that from my perspective, the issue was dictating a specific course sequence that was not feasible was a problem. And I was looking more for a framework that allowed more flexibility so that you could have, for example, you might have an honors class, you might not. You might have an accelerated class, a compacted class. So as we adopted in the middle school. So it's not an either or of two separate classes or not two separate classes. There are multiple ways that we can potentially meet the needs of our students. Insisting upon a two-class system, I think, is too narrow a perspective. But that doesn't mean that I favor a one-class system. I favor a multiple model system. So I think you've at least characterized my perspective incorrectly.
Matt?
I real quick, I share Lenny's opinion from my perspective as well. Just going back to, no one's relitigating 2018 or 2019, but the way it was produced as a non-economically feasible policy at that point in time without proper practice behind it did not mean that I was against having separate classes for different talent levels or grade levels or capability levels. So I'm exactly where Lenny is.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, though, is also that that we're developing a framework, or want to put into our district a framework without truly understanding what that means, and we're not even saying what that means. So I would like to discuss this at a different board meeting.
So I think that I don't agree with your statement there. I think that you start with a framework, and I think that it's very well understood what the framework needs. How that is implemented is then a different question. So the framework is a strategy. The framework isn't an implementation. And so here's the framework. How that gets implemented and what that means across different grades, what can we do in first grade, what can we do in second grade, that is an implementation strategy that is not part of policy. Those are two separate things. And so I think we need to be very clear that it's not that there's not an understanding of what this framework is.
Well, I think for me anyway, okay, I have questions with respect to the last page, and I have several questions, but I also have questions about other aspects of this policy. Like, I'm not even sure what the slash means between, you've added competency descriptors / profile of a graduate, and added profile of a graduate. I don't know what you mean by that. Do you mean and or with the slash? I mean, that's a kind of a basic thing. And what do you mean by profile of a graduate? I know that you've referenced the appendix, which is this profile of a next generation EPS learner, which is from our prior strategic plan. And it talks about that all students will communicate effectively in at least 2 world languages, one of which is English. Is that what we're going for now? We're going to drop this into our policy? I don't understand. I don't understand. This is a longer discussion.
Is it okay, Erica, if I jump in and respond to that question? So I'm going to give you a little bit more background. So if the original policy 601, we used interchangeably educational competencies and profile of a graduate, when really they mean the same thing. So that is why they are now connected, so that when someone is reading it, the community, teachers, students, the board, administration, we are talking about the same thing. One of the identified priorities as a board was to look at profile of a graduate. That was done with the last strategic plan, and we had a work session earlier tonight where that was listed as one of the many things that we could work on. So in the policy committee, our discussion was it made sense to combine those two words so that people know what we're talking about. And at the point where we go as a board and identify profile of a graduate based on the new strategic plan between 2020 and 2025, then we would switch out the appendix at that point. But it doesn't make sense to hold this policy until that becomes a priority with the board, with everything else that we have going on. In addition, we've gotten feedback from our administration that, and I'm going to steal your own words, Ellen, you said earlier, we don't have a year to waste moving the needle on educational excellence for all students. I agree with that, which is why it's imperative that we let our teaching and learning have framework as to how we move students through. And 100%, there's been no discussion of getting rid of any honors classes, AP classes, compacted classes. If anything, I agree with what Janie said, it expands opportunities for students. That's what the talent development framework does. And the Minnesota Council of Gifted and Talented, that we have community members and people in our district that serve on like the board there, they're in line with this type of this approach to the framework. So I just I wanted to respond to that because it's really important that we make sure that the information that's going out to the community tonight is correct information, because I feel like we're being, the intent of this policy is being interpreted just by one board member, and I don't think that's necessarily, I don't think it's accurate. So that's my response.
Well, I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted this to be heard by the District Advisory Council of Gifted and Talented. And I think that would be the appropriate, I know that you had a meeting with administrators and teachers, but I think that is the appropriate place for the discussion of this change to 601.
The feedback from the members of that committee were included in looking at everything, which is we were not asked for feedback at the meeting, the October meeting. So I was there. I know how it was presented, right, and I know what was said, and feedback was not requested. So I'm just saying that now would be a good time, as we're proposing this and as we're in the middle of a discussion of how this is and is this. So I don't think that the board, when I listen to board members, when I listen to Matt about the finances and Lenny about making sure that there's multiple opportunities, I don't think that we're really in that much disagreement. But I do think that what concerns me is that what appears to be the what's happening is that instead of saying we are committed to providing courses that are appropriate for the readiness of students, and I'm talking about student readiness, that there are students in elementary school and secondary that are ready for more. They walk into the classroom and they're ready for more. And when I look at the wording on this framework, I am not sure what this does for those students. And it's not clear.
It's
So I
saying
think we're
that
gonna
we
have
have
to-
these.
I think we're going to have to move on because I think you're reiterating, you're right. That's your opinion about the policy, and others of us have different opinions on what the policy is articulating. So so if board members, there's a consensus among board members that we need to have a work session about this, then we can plan a work session. But beyond that, I think we need to move on with not only our meeting, but getting this policy through. So I'll just ask that to wrap up. I'll ask board members, do you guys want to have another work session to discuss this? Or are we comfortable putting it on the agenda for next month? So if you each could let me know, that would be great.
I would not like, I don't want a work session. I'd like it put on the agenda next month for a vote.
I don't need a work session. I don't want a work session.
Lenny, Matt?
So I'm okay with a work session that has a time cap because I believe that we tend to circle and raise the same points and ask the same questions sometimes. So I don't want to say no work session, but if we had a 1 hour cap on it or even, 45 minutes, but an 1 hour cap would be fine with me. I would not object to that.
Matt?
Sorry, I was trying to silence my background noise. It's not nearly as nice as Lenny's. I was going to say that I'd prefer not to have one because I don't see anything being resolved in an hour at all whatsoever. I think it's going to spin into having 85 surveys and separate groups weigh in. So I just don't see what an hour is going to do. So I would move forward. I think it's a framework.
Yeah, I'm also in favor of moving forward. I think it's actually very well articulated, the intent. I think we'll have to agree to disagree on that, and we can move it forward for next month's agenda. So with that being said, we need to move on to our action section of the evening. So let's see what we have. First, we have John Tope. Are you here?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. So first for action, we have general obligations, school building refunding bonds description. Is there a motion to approve the general obligation school refunding bond?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay.
Let Jamie have the motion.
John, is there anything that you wanted to add or present about this?
Just real briefly, Chair Allenberg, we are refunding our Series 2013A bonds. We're refunding the last 5 maturities of them, which will result in about $120,000 of savings annually, coming up on our next property tax levy of Pay 21. So the board has previously approved a parameters resolution certifying a floor of 3% savings so that we can go ahead with the sale as long as it's 3% savings or more. We're currently estimating 5.375, I believe, in savings. Ellers, our advisor, is. So this motion would allow them to take bids on October 7th, which is a Wednesday, and then present them at the school board meeting on October 12th.
Great. Any questions about this? Yeah, Matt?
Yeah, not a question. Just to make sure everyone's on the same page, both in the board and the listeners, we have refinanced bonds twice in the past 2 years, saving over $1 million for both the district and the taxpayers. This is something that we look at on a constant basis as rates change. By doing this approval tonight, we give John, I'm on vacation and my kids are in the background making a lot of noise, so sorry if I'm hard to hear. We give John and the administration the right to go and seek out better prices for these bonds to save money. It's that simple. If it comes back, rates change in the next few months, we don't have a better improved benefit of at least 3% annually or a certain threshold dollar-wise, then we don't bring it forward to the main board. It's been successful in the past 18 months twice. So this is a pretty basic approval request where, again, the board will have final decision over whether or not to approve it.
Thank you, Matt. Unless there are any other questions, then we can go ahead and vote. Sarah, if you could have us vote by roll call to approve the building refunding bond.
Ellenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen Friedman.
Aye.
The building refunding bond is approved. We're now going to move on to the general obligation school building bonds. Is there a motion to approve the general obligation school building bond?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. John, you're up again. If you have anything
Yes.
to add?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Ellenberg. The 2021 facilities maintenance bond issue is coming off of the approval of the board's 10-year plan that was approved on June 8th, 2020. We're asking for this resolution a little bit early because it actually helps streamline the process in working with MD as long as they see a resolution that we plan to issue bonds here in the spring of 21. They're reviewing our 10-year plan and all the attachments right now. And if I can get this sent into them with intent that we're going to issue bonds next spring, that would make that process go a lot quicker and a lot smoother. And I would stand for questions.
Any questions? Okay, we'll now vote by roll call to approve the building bond.
Ellenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen Friedman.
Aye.
The building bonds are approved. We're now going to move on to 2020-2021 proposed calendar revisions due to COVID. Is there a motion to approve the proposed calendar revisions?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Randy, I know you spoke about this a little earlier, but do you want to give some additional context to this issue?
Yeah, I'll just be very brief because I also mentioned this at the work session, but we are proposing some revisions to the calendar for the 2021 school year. That revision concept is really to front load professional development that we have embedded in the year to move a couple of those professional development days to the front of the calendar. We feel like staff, principals, and teachers, paraprofessionals need that time to prepare for these two models, and it would be best served by front loading that in front of the calendar. In addition to that, we would ask for 2 or 3 additional days of professional development time and preparation for our staff. The way that we would get those 3 additional days and stay budget neutral, it would be to reduce the overall academic year by 3 student contact days. The 2 professional development days that we would propose moving would be February 16th and March 12th of 2021. And I'll just reiterate that our staff have to plan an intense amount of online lessons and content to prepare for this year. They have to prepare for teaching protocols for students to maintain the safety of our students, which is our utmost importance, and make sure that they are acting on those protocols and be trained on those protocols and know what to do in various situations. So it's a different start to the year than we've had in the past ever. And so this is a very unique request to revise the calendar at this time for those reasons.
Thank you, Randy. Do board members have questions or comments about this?
So,
Go ahead, Lenny.
So, Randy, we used to have a requirement of a certain number of hours of instruction, and I can't even imagine what that looks like under the current pandemic. Does this reduction of 3 contact days create any issues with that?
It doesn't. I think we still have a buffer zone in there, but to some degree, with our plan moving forward, we don't feel that we'll need that because we no longer will have the snow days per se that we've had in the past, because we will just simply utilize our remote learning opportunities, and we have that built into the system. So those are days that we don't have to give up as we did in previous years. But even if we did have to give up a few days for some reason, I think we're still in the buffer with being 5 days over.
Julie?
Yeah, I just wanted to get a clarification. The days that we will be replacing during the school year, will any of them fall on a religious holiday? Because I know there was concern about the September 28th date, I think, was floated at one point.
Yeah, so we rescinded that proposal and would like to maintain that for a couple of reasons. I think one, we'll be a few weeks into the school year, and it will be an important opportunity to take a look at how things are going. And make any final adjustments as we're continuing on. But it does also fall on a Yom Kippur religious holiday as well. So it works well with many of our families to not have that be a student contact day. So we've rescinded the proposal to move that day. February 16th and March 12th then would become student contact days. So that's kind of the trade-out. We just move the student contact days from the beginning of the year, a little bit later in the year, and then move that professional development time to the beginning of the year.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. We will now vote by roll call to approve the calendar revisions to the 2021 school calendar.
Ellenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen Friedman.
Aye.
Okay, the changes, the calendar revisions have been approved. We're now going to move on to board norms. Is there a motion to approve the board norms?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Great. As we've discussed before, this document is to be in addition, but not into conflict with any of our policies. It's to highlight expectations we ask of ourselves as board members, and will help us prioritize the work of our district as a highly functional board. It does include best practices from MSBA. Does anyone from the HR committee have any comments before the rest of the board weighs in? Jeannie?
I do not.
No, we've discussed this a number of times.
Yeah.
Anyone else on the board have questions or comments before we vote on this?
I just have a quick.
Go ahead, Owen.
Should I go?
Go
Just
ahead, Owen.
really quick comment, which is that I like many of the initiatives in the board norms document, but there are elements of overreach that I don't like, and so I will not be voting for it. Just to give an explanation to the community.
Thanks, Owen. Ellen?
Yeah, I want to say first, I think that we've made some great improvements to the document. I have issues with the document as well. I would like to make two motions for changes to this document in order for me to approve it. One would be that in communications, under communications, number 3, I would insert the word or write. So the reading would be speak or write in an official capacity outside the board room only when given specific authority from the full board. That would be my first motion. And then the second motion would be under number 5, which would be an addition to the end, which would say, board members may respond directly to community member inquiries or emails directed to them in their official capacities when such response does not require or entail the sharing of substantive information.
Ellen, can you say that again? How the changes?
The two changes that I'm asking for are number.
The first one, just the second one.
The second one is to add the following sentence. Board members may respond directly to community member inquiries or emails directed to them in their official capacities when such response does not require or entail the sharing of substantive information.
What? I was confused. You said it can or can't be substantive.
When such response does not require or entail the sharing of substantive information.
What does that mean, substantive? So if somebody asked me, is there a school board meeting on Monday? And I said, yes, that's a substantive response.
But I would say that in general, substantive information, maybe we want to include this in the in number 5. In general, I'd say substantive information relates to an issue of considerable board or public interest on which an action is pending. In general, substantive information includes or discusses data or other documentation intended or perceived to substantiate, refute, or otherwise argue a conclusion.
So that wouldn't be if I said on Monday we're discussing this at the board meeting. These 3 things are found in the packets. At 5 o'clock, that'll be addressed and a vote will be taken. It's in the action section. That would not be substantive then.
Absolutely.
Okay, then I'm fine with it.
Janie?
Ellen, you read it sounded like a very technical definition of it. I'm wondering what your interpretation of that definition is, because
Of what?
Of substantive.
I believe exactly that it means exactly what I read. It's written in here, it's not clear. I think that we could rewrite this whole number 5. I also have something there, but I thought I would keep it simple and just add the last sentence. If you would like, I could read you how I would write number 5, which is task the superintendent and/or district communications team with responding to community member inquiries and emails when such response requires the sharing of substantive information. In general, substantive information relates to an issue of considerable board or public interest on which an action is pending. In general, substantive information includes or discusses data or other documentation intended or perceived to substantiate, refute, or otherwise argue a conclusion. The superintendent and board chair will work to formulate a response when warranted. The superintendent will provide the board with a copy or summary of the response. And then I would add, a board member wishing to respond directly to a community member inquiry or email with substantive information should contact the superintendent to discuss. Board members may respond directly to community member inquiries or emails directed to them in their official capacities when such response does not require or entail the sharing of substantive information.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
The current norm says that you'll respond only if it relates to substantive. You won't respond directly only if it relates to substantive. So if it's not substantive, the norm doesn't say you cannot.
It only says we may respond to personal emails on substantive district or board information after coordinating with the superintendent.
Right. So
it also says that only through respond to community member emails only through the superintendent or district communication team.
If the email contains substantive district or board information. So the restriction or the norm pertains to an email that contains substantive district or board information. So if it does not contain substantive district or board information, this norm doesn't address it. It doesn't say you can't respond.
It doesn't clearly state, though, that if somebody is asking a substantive question, that you can respond.
Right. If they're asking a substantive question.
But you can still respond, but not in a substantive way.
So I think that we talked about this before, and we said that if someone sends a substantive email and you want to say, thank you for the email, we appreciate the input, please be aware that, someone will respond or whatever, that's fine. There's no issue with that.
What I'm saying
And that
is
if you wanted to go farther is when you would contact the superintendent, right? Like Matt, you gave that example, I think.
right. It's not clear to me. There's two things that are not clear about this statement. Number one is it doesn't define what substantive means. And that's what we all had questions. What does this mean? I mean, I agree with Matt. Like if people are writing about times, can I respond back with a time? It's not clear. And if people are trying to find out or state something else, can I say anything that besides here's the time, stick to the fact? We've talked about not sticking to facts. That it's important to try to just stick to the facts, but is that substance? I don't know. Do I have to stick to, can I say my own personal opinion? If I say this is just my opinion, can I say that? It's not clear. It sounds like most things have to go through the superintendent. It almost sounds like, in general, almost anything anybody writes me has to do with something that the board's going to take action on, or they want the board to take action on. So it's pretty much everything that I get is something that then I would not be able to write back to.
You can write back to it as long as it doesn't contain substantive information that needs to be collaborated with John.
So the only reason you're getting the email is because you're on the school board. So it's pretty standard protocol that school boards try to coordinate responses so that they're accurate. And that's good. I just am saying, but it sounds as if I am not able to, if they're asking about something that's coming up in a board meeting, that I can't respond to them. Even if I don't say,
You're muted, Lenny.
And even if I'm not saying the board is going to have a meeting next week, or the board just decided that, yes, you are right, the board just decided that X, Y, and Z, that we're going to have teachers, that school's going to start later. If I was going to respond, somebody's talking about that. It appears that I wouldn't be able to write people back with that information, according to this.
So
that's not how I read it. I think you're free to respond.
Right, you're applying this hyper-technical approach to it. It's a practical approach that many boards adopt that is looking for a uniformity in response that's accurate. It's also looking for a way of not creating an environment where community members start to look for little allies so that they could then go and grab school board members and lobby the district because they know school board number 1 and number 2 and number 3 have said, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And now all of a sudden you're lobbying it rather than allowing the process to percolate through the administration. I mean, our preferred way of working is ideas are brought to the board. If a community member brings it to the board, we should absolutely bring it to the attention of the district. The district should then be investigating it and coming back to us. We shouldn't be having this sort of little lobbying internally with community members as the district is looking at an issue. So part of this is to try to set up a practice, again, that's pretty typical, that allows us to function as a board and allows the district to function and bring issues to us.
Chair Allenberg, I wonder if given the hour, we should just vote on Ellen's proposal.
So there is no
With the second wording, we may respond directly to emails.
So do other board members want to add in the Ellen sentence to the end of that one paragraph?
So point of order.
Yep.
There's a motion pending to approve the policy.
Right.
So there is no motion to amend it, as Ellen is saying, because that's not proper motion.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to get if we can do the changes in this motion as an amendment to it.
So she could request a friendly amendment, which is typically done to change a word or two, not usually a paragraph. So I'm just pointing out a little process.
Okay, so I would like to propose a friendly amendment. Thank you. I would like to insert speak or write into number 3, put the words speak or write in an official capacity. And then in number 5, I would change that to the last sentence. Board members may respond to, cross out the word personal, because these are emails, may respond to emails
Ellen, you're on number 5. Number 5 has 2 parts. So respond to community member emails only through the superintendent or district communications team. That is for the spirit of that was emails that are sent to the whole board. Board members at the end, board members may respond to personal emails is meant to address Matt's example when we had this initial discussion. What if somebody emails me in particular with a question, right? And it's a personal connection. So there's 2 parts of that. So
when somebody emails you personally, you need to talk to the superintendent?
If you are going to give any
So here's a delta on that. So for tonight's meeting, right, we voted on when this calendar would start, right? So if somebody emails me and says, which happened to me last week, hey, when is the school starting? I can say, we're voting on that on Monday. But if I say, that's fine. But if I say we're voting that on Monday and I'm voting for it, that then creates the problem. But I can respond and say, there's a vote on Monday, end of day Monday, you'll know. That's how far I'm supposed to go. Because they can create a synthetic daisy chain around it, Ellen, unfortunately, which then said I talk to Matt, Ellen, Janie, and Owen, and I know it's passing. That's where we have to stop.
Well, but from what you said, from what this reads, you should be coordinating through John.
No, that's not how it reads.
If there's something of substance that you want to say, then yeah, you should go to John and say.
I do not deem it substantive that I give a publicly available update.
That isn't substantive. That is not. I'm saying if you want to relay to a community member the rationale behind why we're doing this, that should be something that comes from the district.
Oh, okay. So maybe.
So I need to interrupt.
I have a way to change it that makes sense.
So no, I need to interrupt for a second. Chair, may I have the floor?
Yep.
So
yes.
Our policy says this meeting ends in 2 minutes unless we move to extend the time. So, and it will just simply end by our rules. I would request that we extend the time until 10:15, and that requires a majority approval. I don't know if it requires a motion, but I would ask that the chair extend the time to 10:15.
And Chair Allenberg, I just want to add that we will need to stop the feed at 10 o'clock and reboot with a new feed at 10 o'clock.
So it's 10 o'clock right now. So I am in favor of extending it for 15 more minutes. When we get back to the new feed, I think we can vote on the board norms.
And Zach, how long do you need? Okay.